Morning, everybody. I'm super excited to welcome Scott Pollack, founder and CEO of Firneo. It's an amazing organization Scott's pulling together to help ecosystems grow. So, Scott, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'd love to take you on a journey here through a discussion so that our audience can follow. But maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself and your firm and how you got started.
Yeah, for sure. And this story of Firneo and my own personal career journey kind of intertwine. So it starts back a little over 20 years ago, where I spent my entire career in partnerships, split between startups and large companies. So I was at American Express for a long time, and WeWork and Dow Chemical and a bunch of startups. And all along the way, I'd always kind of described myself as a professional ugly duckling, in the sense that, in partnerships, I was always surrounded by people who looked a little bit different from me. I was surrounded by accountants and lawyers and traditional salespeople and marketers and so on. But again, not that many people whose career really looked like mine. And so that meant I always felt a little bit alone on my career journey, kind of figuring things out for myself. And over the years, that led me to starting Firneo, when I ultimately came to realize that I wasn't the only one feeling alone, and that there are lots of other professional ugly ducklings out there in roles like partnerships that we could kind of start to come together, and created Firneo as a place to bring together the people and the knowledge of how to be as effective as possible in a role that you never studied in college, that you're often figuring out as you go along, that you're often starved for the kinds of mentorship and coaching and foundational knowledge that is really core to being successful in your career and is built into the career tracks of those more traditional roles, but is not so much the case for a job like partnerships. So that's what we focus on, is helping people to learn how to be as effective as possible in this job.
Awesome. So we'll get into a little bit of your background, but maybe you can tell us a little bit about the name. What is Firneo? How did you pick the name? What's in it?
Well, it actually means new tree in Old Norse, so it dates back quite a while. But really emblematic of this idea of the kind of older trees in the forest are protecting the saplings, in a similar way to the idea of mentorship, which is the elders in a career are kind of protecting and helping the rest of the forest to grow, and that's really kind of emblematic of what we're all about.
So maybe you can tell a little bit about what your company does, structure-wise.
Yeah. So we are a learning community for people who are in partnerships, business development, and ecosystem roles. And what that really looks like is a combination of a couple of things, but primarily focused around training. So providing foundational frameworks and instructional content to help you be as effective as possible in the role, and supporting that with ways to practice your skills and so on. And then also coaching. So pairing you with some of the top partnership experts in the world, people with 15, 20 plus years of experience building partner ecosystems at companies from Amazon to Cisco to Microsoft and everywhere in between. And they are available to help you individually be your best as a kind of soundboard and mentor that you can get paired with, to be that guide to your partnerships career.
That's fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about a framework. So at Zinfi, we introduced a partner ops framework, which is a combination of marketing and sales and other partner-related functions. And we go through kind of a 7-step process for our customers, automating those steps. One is strategy, second is onboarding, then enablement, then co-marketing, co-selling, then incentives and acceleration. So maybe you can talk a little bit about maybe 2 dimensions. One is for mid-market companies that are trying to build a channel, or maybe even a little earlier stage, and then enterprise. Pick a stage, walk us through when it comes to coaching and developing an organization that you do. How would you do that? And maybe some thoughts around 1 or 2 or more specific steps for 1 or 2 segments.
Yeah, I mean, I think at any stage or size of company, whether you're mid-market or enterprise, I think there's some foundational components of building effective partnerships that can be harder to come by, and often are some of the missing first steps for a lot of companies that may run into trouble, especially the partnership leaders that come into a company and find themselves not performing up to the expectation that they or their leadership might have had. And I think that often starts with the strategic elements of really defining very clearly, like, why are partnerships the right channel for you to leverage, and to what end? And how can you be most valuable as a partner to your partners? Starting with that deep understanding of what value are we trying to create from partnerships, and what value do we have to offer to customers, to partners, to the ecosystem as a whole, is a first step to then identifying how can we be most effective at finding partners who can fill in the gaps of value that we don't have, who we can fill in their gaps, and so on. And so I think a lot of times the first step of establishing a strong partnership ecosystem is really understanding what are we even trying to solve for? And that seems like such a simple and almost obvious thing. But you'd be shocked by how frequently companies often just jump in to the mix of saying, well, we should go start partnerships. We should start looking at how do we have other people sell our products, or how do we, find companies that we can partner with in one form or fashion. But they don't necessarily start with those prerequisite questions of what problems are we really trying to solve and what problems can we solve for others.
So let's double click on that from a strategy wise, right? Because that is possibly the most important step, targeting the right end customer segment, putting together ideal partner profiles, going after with them with a specific business proposition. So walk us through a little bit maybe on those three steps. First, picking the right customer segment, putting together a value bundle, picking ideal partners, and then putting together a business bundle for them. How would you engage? How would you help companies through courses, curricula, coaching, consulting projects? What's the mode of engagement?
Yeah, so our mode of engagement right now is primarily on helping the individual partner leader who is, oftentimes struggling in the role, because this is, again, a job that you probably never studied in college. It's a job that you probably fell into. Maybe you were in sales or marketing or product or some other adjacent space, and all of a sudden you find yourself leading partnerships. And oftentimes that doesn't come with a playbook. What we've been focused on is providing people with that playbook, and in turn, providing companies with a much clearer sense of direction. How can you and your teams build better partnerships? So the frameworks, the expertise of others who've been there before, the training and practice opportunities to kind of try on for size how you might react in certain scenarios is the kind of mode by which we provide that. But ultimately, what we're really focused on is how do we enable individual partner leaders, and therefore teams of individual partner leaders that collectively make up a company's partner team, how to be more effective in the role.
Do you predominantly focus with SaaS companies, or do you also work with hardware and other services providers that are trying to go through channel?
I'd say it's pretty broadly across tech. We've certainly, B2B SaaS has been one of the larger categories just by nature of the prevalence of partnerships in that space. But we've had folks from kind of all manner of company, from hardware to fintech to media and everywhere in between.
That is awesome. So let's keep on double clicking and unpack, a couple of those dimensions. So let's take a transactional software product, let's say $5,000, and let's take $100,000 solution product, both in SaaS space. What are the pivot moments for an organization to figure out, should I stay direct or should I go build a partner network? Should I, go into marketplaces? Should I partner with ISVs? Walk us through the logical framework that an organization can go through to figure out what's the right thing for them to do.
Yeah, I think the starting point of any effective indirect motion, of the idea of building a partnership strategy, starts with an understanding of value. What value as a company you are after, as well as what value you have. And so taking this kind of audit approach of saying, what problems are we trying to solve? So for example, if we know that we have a problem of it's getting more and more expensive to reach a certain audience of customers, right? We've been exhausting other marketing channels. Our ad spend is increasing to unsustainable rates. Our ability to build an audience and reach customers is just getting harder and harder. Our sales cycles are getting longer and longer. Whatever that version of that problem is, of the difficulty of reaching customers, that is a problem that is identified. And understanding the value that you're after is what I'd call audience value. Right. In this case, you are looking for ways that you can tap into the audience of a partner that has that value that is a gap for you. And so understanding, first off, what value you're after, contrasting audience value against product value, for example. Perhaps it's less of a need to reach new customers and more to serve our existing ones with products that we can't cost effectively serve up to them, or to improve our existing offerings, or perhaps it's brand value, right? Our main issue is that we have to build a deeper degree of trust with customers in order for them to choose us, and establishing a deeper sense of brand, perhaps by engaging with others who can kind of lift us with them, is another opportunity. Understanding what is that core source of value you're after, what problem are you trying to solve, allows you to then have a clear definition of how are we going to solve that. In some cases, the answer might just be investing more in direct, or that's building more nodes of your direct sales force, or investing more in marketing, or some other mechanism. And in other cases, when you recognize that the gap that you have to achieve that value is somewhat insurmountable on your own, that's when you realize that the only bridge to your value gap is to partner with others. But by doing that pre-work, by understanding deeply what is the value you're after, what are the real gaps that we have, and why do we have them, only then can you start to look at, well, now what value can we provide to that partner that could be a bridge to the value gap that they have? Why would a partner care to work with you? And unless you can really clearly define a rationale behind not just what is an ideal partner for you, what are the dimensions by which a partner would be theoretically ideal for you, whether it's the size and scale of their customer base, the particular definition of their ICP and whether it matches to yours and so on. Of course, we need to look at it through that lens and determine if a partner is a good fit for us and can help us solve the problems that we've defined to fill the gaps in value that we have. But it's critical that we also look at it the other way around. We have to understand why would they care to work with us, because what value gaps do they have that we can be the bridge for them.
So if I take your framework, so, in classic way, people talk about product market fit to really figure out when you're starting out with an MVP, focus on a segment, serve that segment, then expand into successive, adjacent segments, right? And build the product out, whether through a single product or a multi-product approach. Talk to us a little bit about sort of a product partner fit. What framework can we use? What is the equivalent of an MVP that, I could use if I'm trying to go to market to figure out, do I have value for my partner?
Yeah, I think it's really important that you recognize that it's very easy to go out to market, try to land a bunch of partners, and through sheer brute force and will and relationships that exist in industry and the attractiveness of your brand as a company, you could probably land a number of partners, purely landing signed partner agreements. But that's not really what it's about, because there are all too many companies that have 100 partners and only one or two of them are actually delivering any sort of real result. So to get to, partner market fit, it's critical to kind of take a step back and have that deep sense of clarity of what is it that you are trying to achieve? What is it that will make for a potentially successful partnership, so that when you can leverage all that sheer will and so forth to kind of open the door, ideally paired with a clear value prop to a partner of why they'd want to partner with you, you now have the foundational basis of a partnership that can be successful, because you know what it will take for this partnership when in the negotiation stage to become something that generates the value, the KPIs that are going to matter to each company. And taking that slightly slower but more focused approach allows you to not just find, but to validate what your true ideal ideal partner profile looks like. Oftentimes we look at the idea of defining an ideal partner profile as a retroactive response to, let's go and look at, of all the partners that we can work with, which ones are performing best, and then we use that as a model. I think that taking the other way around, of saying we have a limited pool of resources to invest as a company, and even more limited pool of resources to invest in partnerships versus any other channels, you need to do that pre-work up front and go slowly working with partners to validate or invalidate your assumptions before you invest too heavily in scaling. And that requires a patience on behalf of not just a partner leader, but perhaps more importantly, on behalf of a CEO and a leadership team and a company at large, to recognize that the path to successful partnerships is not going to be necessarily at the same rate as the path to, hitting quota for any given sales team.
So once we have figured out, the segment that I want to focus on, talk to us a little bit about go-to-market motions that we can build to reach out to partners, get them interested. This whole awareness, interest, trial, purchase, renewal and upgrades and advocacy cycle that end customer goes through. What is sort of the, Jay McBain talks about sort of land and expand and influence motion through a partner base. But talk to a little bit about how to reach to partners, because they're busy. They're already carrying some stuff. The partners I want to talk to possibly are successful ones already in their business. Why would they pay attention to me? How do I engage? How do I start? How do we go from there?
Yeah, I think the most important question that you can answer before you start reaching out to partners is understanding, why should they care? Why should a partner care about not just partnering with you, but responding to your email, to following up with you on your LinkedIn message, to taking a conversation, a first conversation even, right? Having a clear understanding to why they should care is going to be a driving insight that will start with your first meeting, would take you through not just signing a contract with a partner, but also through how do you motivate a partner and kind of enable and operationalize that relationship so that it actually becomes fruitful. And understanding why they should care is a research exercise to a degree. Again, it starts with understanding what value the partner has to you, but then also goes the other way around. What value do you have to that partner? What are the gaps that they have? What is the particular initiative that they're working on right now, whether it's reaching certain customers that you have, whether it's expanding on their product roadmap in an accelerated time frame that can be done by partnering with you and leveraging your resources and so on. What is it that they've signaled in some public fashion is relatively interesting to them, and signaled whether it's in their 10K reports as a large public company or the things that their marketing managers are posting on social media or what have you. The insight that you can garner from all the exhaust of people's engagement online is what will give you the insight into what they really care about. And then with that understanding at a company level, really now you have to narrow that down to why should they care at an individual level. That particular partner manager or CEO or whomever it is that you are ultimately reaching out to engage in partner conversations, you need to understand why they will care personally. What is it about the definition of their role, of their title, and their what you perceive to be the sphere of influence that they have in their organization? What is it about your potential for partnership that's going to directly affect the KPIs that they're looking to drive or other things that might be motivating to them to say, this is worth a chat? Narrowing in on that understanding is really the first step to getting in the door, because I've heard all too many partner leaders who are trying to, shotgun blast out outreach messages, and they're getting an atrocious hit rate on companies that are even willing to engage in a first conversation. And oftentimes that happens when it is really just a spray and pray model of reaching out and pushing a value proposition without a deep understanding of why would they care about your value prop, and why would that individual person you're reaching out to care about the prospect of partnering with you, whether it's organizationally in line to the goals that they may have or personally of interest to them. That's the starting point, having that understanding and then acting accordingly as you do outreach, tailoring your outreach to potential partners, individual partner contacts based on that deeper understanding.
That's fascinating. So let's go back a little bit. You started with your great background at American Express and WeWork. Maybe you can use a couple of those companies, maybe something else as examples where you have gone through this process that you just described, figuring out customer value, figuring out partner value, figuring out how to, reach and engage with them, and then going through the steps. Can you walk us through some experiences that you have had personally?
A couple of examples that I can take from my American Express days. One classic example of a partnership that, in fairness, this one existed before I joined the company and was a long-standing 20-plus year relationship, was between American Express and Costco. And now, for those who are less familiar, if you go into a Costco these days, they only take one credit card. Nowadays, it's Visa, but for a long time, from like 1990, late 90s until 2016 or so, approximately, the only credit card that they accepted was American Express. And in addition, they'd be oftentimes pushing you as a Costco member on getting an American Express, a Costco branded American Express card. This was a multi-billion-dollar deal annually between these two giant Fortune 50 companies. And I think if you look at what drives a relationship like that, it really comes down to solving for that value gap and value bridge story that I was describing a little bit ago. For American Express, the company had obviously a number of resources at its disposal to reach customers, but oftentimes, it gets more and more expensive and increasingly difficult to reach customers when they're at a particular, point of sale, a point of potential interest that is heightened. So if you think about from a small business standpoint, so I worked on the small business Costco relationship. So there's a consumer card relationship and a small business card relationship. When you think about small businesses that you're trying to attract, how do you reach them? Well, for American Express, it was through direct mail and email and online and ads and all the different channels. But oftentimes, small businesses are hard to reach. But a time when they are often more accessible is when they are going about the course of their business and in a way that is not interrupting them. And so when they're in a warehouse for a Costco, shopping for their restaurant or buying boxes of snacks for their convenience store, whatever it is they are in their Costco for, it's an opportune moment for them thinking about the operations of their business and the expenses as they're about to rack up a bill. it's a perfect time for an opportunity, an offer to be presented to them saying, hey, you know what? If you had this particular American Express credit card that's uniquely offered, exclusively offered through Costco with these benefits, you could save a bunch of money on the purchase today. You could have all these different benefits. The key value prop that partnership provided to American Express was access at a unique point in time that was very otherwise hard to reach because it's easy to ignore those direct mailers, to ignore the ads because a business owner is focused on their business for 99% of the day. And in that moment that Costco had them, it was a uniquely rich opportunity. And vice versa, understanding what does Costco get out of this? Why would they care? Was advantageous economics. It was more value to members, right? There was a very complex and deep relationship across the board that not only affected, revenue shares on the credit card activity, but also the processing for their every transaction. So they were able to, by having the value that Amex was looking for in kind of access to an audience at a certain unique point of time, they were able to use that to extract great economic reward of revenue share and better economics on card processing and what have you. But in addition to that, it engendered a deeper relationship with their customers because they had a unique asset, a Costco exclusive credit card with unique benefits. That was essentially a form of product integration. We don't usually think about it that way. That was a new offering that they could offer to Costco customers, to whom their promise for everything Costco offers is, unique value. It's the best pricing, the best packaging of whatever product you're getting. Well, in this case, it was a credit card. And that was unique product value that they could offer to their customers. And so the combination of those 2 points of view, of American Express getting tremendous value and Costco getting tremendous value, all of it centered around providing tons of value to our mutual customers, it created a relationship that lasted for 20 plus years and created tens of billions of dollars, if not hundreds of billions of dollars of enterprise value between the two companies.
I can totally relate to it. I have had an Amex card for more than, 3 decades, and I don't like carrying balances. I like, cleaning up my bills at the end of the month, and I value savings. And so I can relate to this ultimate customer value Costco represents, buying in bulk, saving a lot of money, and then same exact thing with American Express, that you don't pay interest rates. So I think that's a great example. Can you tell us a little bit, maybe a client that you have worked with trying to go to market, what framework you used to kind of have them walk through this journey to figure out what they should or should not do?
Yeah. So for all the students and mentees that we've worked with, for coaching as well as for folks going through a program, we look at a framework called the value alignment framework. And what that looks at is really look at the full partnership process through 3 stages. And the first stage is what we call the having value stage. And in that stage, we're really trying to understand internally, what are the dynamics internally that can set you up to build really impactful partnerships? What are the problems that we're trying to solve inside of this organization? And how can partnerships be the solution to that problem? How do we get internal alignment with all of the internal stakeholders, from the executive team to marketing, product, legal, customer success, sales? What are the particular characteristics that they are looking for? What are the problems they are trying to solve that can ensure that before we proceed out to market, looking to build partnerships and then execute against them, how do we make sure that we're fully aligned as an organization on what matters to us and what matters to each individual stakeholder? So having that starting point in the having value stage allows us to move to the second of the 3 stages of this framework, which we call the communicating value stage. And that is now where having internal alignment and a clear understanding of what we're after as a company, what we can offer as a company, we look to actually go to market and bring some partners on board. And in that stage, in the communicating value stage, we are looking to communicate the value that we have to partners, to our customers, to our partners, and use that to identify, well, who are the partners that would be most aligned with the value that we have to offer, and and vice versa, who would be our ideal partners? How do we open the door to the proper context, the ideal context inside of an organization that will be organizationally and individually motivated enough to care about partnering with us, so that we can ultimately negotiate and structure and close partnership deals that can allow us to get finally to that 3rd stage of this framework, which is delivering value stage, which is really where the rubber meets the road, right? Wherein we've now identified everything we need internally to have alignment, and we've then used that in understanding to get in the door with partners and sign and close deals with partners. Now it really comes down to, how do we launch and manage and enable and scale those partnerships based on an understanding of the value that is flowing at every stage of this to every individual stakeholder, to every partner, to every customer, so that we can actually enable those partners to deliver against the KPIs that were promised all along and to deliver the value to customers that we mutually are seeking to do in order to drive both of our company's goals.
So let's take the last step, the delivering value, right? So in our Zinfi partner ops framework, we have strategize, onboard, enable, co-market, co-sell, incentivize, and accelerate, right? So delivering value, if you take that as a sort of a third step in your framework, what are the steps in our framework do you think fit into that?
Well, I think maybe just repeat one more time what the steps in your framework were.
Strategize, onboard, enable, co-market, co-sell, incentivize, and accelerate.
I mean, I think to be clear, all of those stages are critical. I think when it comes to really the idea of the delivering value stage assumes that you've strategized about what exactly is the value to your partner, and now you're prepared to launch. So I'd say it starts probably at enablement here, right? What that looks like, first and foremost, is making sure that the respective teams who are critical to actually launching this partnership and ultimately the foundations of enablement begin with preparing for launch, making sure that all the teams are aware of the potential for what this partnership can be, aligned on the direction of where this partnership can go, the KPIs that we're going to be tracking, the dynamics by which we will be servicing customers and ultimately delivering value to them. It starts really in this stage where we're looking at, before we launch, let's make sure that we have our ducks in a row and we have alignment across the companies, that the respective teams across each company, marketing and sales and so on, are fully aligned so that we can enable the feet on the street. Let's say it's marketing or it's sales, not just the tools and the knowledge, the guides to selling products or whatever else that are necessary, but the underlying alignment on why we're going to market together. So I think that's really where things start. And then on a continuous basis from there, it really looks at, well, how do we manage that relationship and make sure that we continue to maintain that alignment that we work so hard to get? Because ultimately, if we lose sight of our focus on making sure we understand why each company and why each individual in each company cares, and ultimately why customers will care about the output of this relationship, of this partnership. If we lose sight of that just for a minute, then the partnership has the potential to become, to fill the graveyard of what I call vanity partnerships that were formed because they sounded like a great idea, but really didn't deliver any value and probably are not necessary in the first place.
Makes a lot of sense. So I want to go back a little bit. So once we strategize, talk to a little bit about the onboarding framework and the enablement framework that you just sort of alluded to. What are the things a mid-market company trying to build a channel or build an ecosystem needs to think about in both of those phases, onboard and enable?
So I think a lot of it comes back to the strategizing that comes in the kind of in the value alignment framework in those first two stages. Again, understanding kind of what value you're after as a company, what value your partners are after, and then kind of negotiating partnership deals based on that understanding and that alignment between them. So once you get to that point, it really what is critical here to kind of launch a partnership and onboard respective teams, I think is a couple of things. Number one is making sure that everyone is fully aware, all your internal stakeholders are fully aware of what the goals of that partnership are. So having a clear sense of what the KPIs that you're going to track are. And again, this is the kind of thing that seems obvious, but it's oftentimes only obvious in retrospect, wherein, you as a partner leader probably have spent a lot of time trying to negotiate the certain parameters that will make this partnership successful. But that doesn't mean that your internal teams, that your head of sales or your account execs or your marketing or product or customer success teams have the same degree of understanding that you do, and vice versa. Your partners' counterparts probably don't have that. So I think the first step of maintaining that alignment is really being very clear across the board of this is what we are looking to achieve with this partnership, and this is what we expect to be able to achieve if we are able to commit and actually execute with the resources that we've committed to making this partnership happen. So having that first step of just checking in with your teams, and ideally this is something you've been doing all along, but when you're preparing to launch, really comes down to checking in with those teams and making sure that they are as on board now with the direction of where this partnership is going, with the projections of where the KPIs will be, and so far as it affects their particular goals and resource allocation to support that partnership. Now is absolutely the time to be ensuring that you have that before you invest a lot in marketing to the public or trying to enable sales teams or whomever, because if you don't have that foundation underway, it'll likely fall apart.
That's great. So Scott, now that you have talked about sort of strategizing, onboarding, and enabling, talk to a little bit about how does Firneo, your team, engages with a prospect or a mid-market company brand that's trying to go to market and build this motion. What are the steps can they go through?
Yeah, so we have a couple of offerings that serve, partner leaders and companies at, everywhere from, call it Series B stage startup all the way through enterprise. We've had, hundreds of customers at every level. Number one is we have what we call our partner-led growth bootcamp, which is really designed for a partner leader who's looking to kind of have a much stronger foundation of skills and knowledge underneath them. So this is basically an 8-week program. It's a combination of course material and templates and tools and exercises that to practice your skills paired with coaching. This is kind of a contained program that allows you to really establish a strong foundation for your partnership motion so that you as an individual partner leader or as a team of partner leaders, if you're looking at this on behalf of your company, can really speak the same language, can have a clear sense of the frameworks and tools and tactics that go into building effective partnerships. And looking at that as a tool to provide a foundation, if you've never had a playbook provided to you, if you're relatively newer to partnerships, is a very common use case. But so too is we've had people with 20 plus years of experience go through this program as a way to create a more common language, to validate the approach that they're taking, to give them a clear way to connect the dots between maybe the many things that they've done before, but in a less systematic way. And what this program is meant to do is provide a much more systematic way of going about how do you build partnerships. And again, that's a combination of kind of course material and templates and what have you, but also coaching, which is something that in addition to being a part of this program, we also are starting to offer as a standalone, monthly subscription offering where you can be paired with a 15, 20, 25 plus year veteran of partnerships, people who are seasoned experts who've not only done your job before, but have probably made all the mistakes that you could inevitably make and have learned from them. And so the opportunity to have one of those types of people in your corner as your go-to coach or mentor is an unbelievable time saver. It is an unbelievable accelerator for you to not only learn from them, but to deliver against your partnership goals in an accelerated time frame that really is not achievable unless you are sacrificing your decades to go through the same pitfalls that they have. And so having that person, and I'm talking about people like Balaji Subramanian, who led partnerships at Cisco and Zuora and other companies, or Christiane Oyedeji, who led partnerships at Calendly and MailChimp and so on, and Janet Geeson, who led partnerships at Shutterstock and brought them to IPO. I mean, people who have decades of experience. These are folks who can help you shortcut the learning process for yourself and can shortcut the often time-consuming process of building impactful ecosystems for your company in a way that, oftentimes is not, we don't have the time to lose. So this is a way to really jumpstart things.
That makes a lot of sense. So maybe you can talk a little bit about the courseware, how it's designed, maybe the module framework, the steps, how long a specific person needs to go through, a little bit about the cost structure also.
Yeah. So the program we call the Partner-Led Growth Bootcamp. Again, a combination of coursework and tools and templates as well as coaching. So it comes with a couple of months of coaching included in that. It is designed to be flexible. So we used to offer cohort-based programs that would be meeting live every week for a period of eight weeks or so. And what we found in doing so was that it was challenging for people to kind of fit it into their schedules. And so what we did is we took all the things that we learned over years of teaching different programs, we turned them into a really flexible program that you can do on your own time, but still contains the kind of rich learning experiences, the kind of frameworks and content, the tools and templates, the practice opportunities to put yourself into the shoes of experts with case studies, kind of interactive case studies that are part of this, where you'll be able to hear the story of an expert as they go through a particular challenge in their career and put yourself in their shoes and say, well, what would I do if I were them? All of those elements are contained in this program that, we generally would say takes people generally between 4 to 8 weeks to go through on your time. It is self-paced, but at the same time, it's there for you as long as you need it to, and you can extend it over that. But on average, I'd say people generally spend 4 to 8 weeks going through it. And that, again, pairs with coaching, which as part of this program, you have 2 months of access to one of the partner experts that I was mentioning before, a person who's that kind of mentor in your corner, a seasoned partnerships veteran who can help you not only with the course material, but even more so your real world challenges. And we've had folks who've used it to great effect to drive partnership outcomes and overcome roadblocks, from internal dynamics and internal politics with stakeholders all the way to overcoming challenges that they had with intransigent partner who's just been a roadblock to your success, as well as people who've used it just to affect their own career as they think about where they want to go next, and having that kind of senior guidance, which sometimes is missing in your leadership chain, from someone who's been in your shoes before, and getting that kind of career perspective. So that's the few different ways that people have leveraged the partner-led growth bootcamp. And again, we are starting to roll out ways that you can extend that coaching on a continuous basis so that it doesn't have to end after the program's done.
So looking back 2024 and maybe looking forward, what was one new dimension you included in your courseware in 2024 that you thought was a trend? And then what are you thinking of including this year in 2025 that you think is a trend?
There are two things. So I'd say in what we kind of recognize and incorporate into our programs that have been incredibly powerful has been the idea of practice. So I talk about the idea of interactive case studies. We call these expert stories. And the idea here is that we've captured some of the particular stories of experts who've been in your shoes, who've dealt with challenges of having impossible timeframes to launch partner programs, that have faced challenges of partners that were the relationship had deteriorated due to issues that preceded them in the role, and any number of other partner challenges that are all too common in between. We've captured some of their stories and we've turned them into interactive case studies that allows you to kind of hear a little bit about what experience they had, and then pause and say, well, what would I do? And kind of share your answers, address how would you solve that challenge if you were them. And it provides this opportunity to practice your skills in a really unique way that really isn't available unless you're, in that boat. But by hearing it proactively, kind of you get to develop some pattern recognition so that when you inevitably face similar challenges, you'll be prepared for them in a way that, no textbook or can teach you. The other thing that we're incorporating that I think is an exciting trend for the future is this idea of one-on-one coaching. And we talked to hundreds of partner leaders and really tried to understand what was holding them back from being as impactful as possible, because all the challenges that lead to what I call the partnership death cycle, wherein you have expectations from leadership that ultimately are not met because of the varying many challenges of leading partnerships, ultimately leads to the challenges that you face in not only performing your role, but how that affects your long-term career prospects as a partner leader. That partnership death cycle is something that all too many people talked about, the varying symptoms, and it realized that there's this disease plaguing people. And the number one solution that people were looking for, that we're now starting to provide, is one-on-one coaching. Because every particular partnership scenario is, on the one hand, unique, and therefore having personalized guidance to support your journey in partnerships, to support your company's unique particularities around what partnerships looks like there, is critical to getting the kind of support that you can then apply. But at the same time, a lot of those challenges are patterns that you may not recognize, but a partnership expert who's been in your shoes before can kind of draw upon their experience. And so our coaches, I hesitate to even call them coaches, because really it's a combination of a coach and a mentor. A coach, oftentimes you think about as someone who hasn't necessarily been in your shoes, but can ask good questions and help you be introspective. But really what we're providing people who are a combination of providing that kind of insight, but also have the experience and can tell you, well, this is what I've done in the past. And the combination of those elements of being able to practice your skills and get direct, personalized one-on-one guidance on a continuous basis is kind of a game changer for people in this role.
Well, it's been an amazing discussion. This will go out to 600,000 subscribers worldwide, and we're possibly going to get 30 to 50,000 views. I really hope our customer base listens to you. Visit your website, Firneo.com, which we'll share later on. So, Scott, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Would love to have you back.
I appreciate it. It's really fun to chat. Thanks so much.